Good evening and welcome to the Cover One Buffalo podcast. Excited to be here tonight. I'm your host, Greg Thompson. I'll be coming in solo today because we have exciting news in the Bills Mafia family. We have a new member. Our normal co-host, Aaron Quinn, is excited to welcome a new member to the family. We have a healthy and happy baby and mama at home, and Aaron is rightfully spending some time with them. Excited to be able to probably get some rest. I know as a father myself, and he's going to be with us again during the week, this week and next week. But today it'll just be me coming in to talk about what was a very frustrating and challenging game, but something that I think we can get through and that we'll talk through and be able to make the best of here. So before we jump into everything, I want to talk a little bit about the coverage we have over at cover1.net. Fantastic elements available across the board. We have your draft coverage from Russell and Christian. We have awesome video breakdowns from Eric Turner. We have our 4 up, 4 down coming in from Fernando. Just constantly good content and information, quality information coming across every day, being able to help us out and get some good things going so that we're excited about what we have and excited about what we can talk about with the Bills, even after a game like today. Obviously, my favorite part of that is the premium member Slack. Come on over, $25, join as a premium member. You get extra content. Eric takes us through all kinds of exciting things to learn how to use the video and all 22 breakdown more intelligently. And we really just have a good community of Bills fans who can talk about games in an intelligent way, be able to break things down, kick ideas around, and be able to kind of talk about what we have and what we can do going forward without having to worry about what some of the rabbit holes can be when we drag that down into the mud on Twitter and some of the other social media contexts. So, come on over, join us in the Slack channel and be able to be part of that conversation. We're going to go through our normal rundown this week, talking about what we have from a game content, what it means going forward, what we can do with it overall, and try to take away from what was a really embarrassing loss today. And we'll run through that, and I'll be here with you today. All right, jumping right in. Obviously, our thoughts overall are going to really be just an unacceptable performance. It's something that I don't think that we can take lightly. I want to be able to separate it, though. Today was a really poor game. I'm going to go through a couple things that I think we can take some confidence from and some positives, but we've talked about what that recipe is going to be able to put together a win, be able to put together a positive game script for the Bills, and how that's going to relate to victories and what we have. We did virtually none of those things today, and that resulted in an unacceptable, terrible game and a win for the Colts. Now, separating that, I don't think that's an indictment on the process. I don't think that's an indictment on the overall coaching staff and what we have to offer and what we're doing as a front office, as an organization. And I think the people who take and separate a frustrating, upsetting, disappointing game that was not acceptable by any standard, and then take that to mean that, hey, we need to fire everybody or we need to get rid of the entire front office, we need to start over. I just don't believe that's what that next step needs to be. I think there are challenges. I think there are things that we need to do a lot better to improve. I think there are things that we need to be able to look at that are going to take us to that next step that we're not there today. But I think it can be a really bad game and a really bad day, but not change my outlook for the future and what it means for the overall organization. So obviously we talked about that recipe. What it's going to take to have a win for the Buffalo Bills, we talk about this every week, is a positive turnover differential, positive penalty differential, and being able to go through that and have that to our benefit so that things are falling our way. We had neither of those today or even close to that. We had 5 turnovers on our side. We had 0 on their side. That's never going to be a win for the Buffalo Bills in this current environment. We had 7 penalties for 59 yards on our side, 4 for 35 on their side. That's never going to help us either. Overall, we actually had some positive things going, but it just wasn't anything that was going to add up for the lack of talent that we have and what the position that's going to put us in to be able to have anything positive overall and let us down the rabbit hole we got down today. So our normal segment, we're going to do gruntled and disgruntled. People talk about being disgruntled all the time. I want to give gruntled a chance to see their moment in the sun. It was really hard to find that today. I'll start with disgruntled. I'm going to go to the defense, specifically the communication between the linebackers and the safeties. There were so many plays where we weren't even sure whose fault it was between Milano and Poyer, Tremaine Edmonds and Micah Hyde, but there was constant miscommunication between those guys, and they have been a strength of this defense up to this point. I'll get into that more when we get to the defensive breakdown, but today it was just a really poor effort and something that we need to be able to depend on if we're going to be competitive, and today was just unacceptable. For my gruntled, it was, again, really hard to find anything. I'll tie that between our special teams and Corey Bojorquez. We didn't have a lot of gaffes. We didn't have the penalties we had before. Bojorquez had some nice punts. We didn't give up a lot of returns. That element didn't let us down as we had in the last game and was a huge reason that we lost last week to the Texans. And they did their part today and weren't the reason that we lost. So it's pretty sad when that's what I'm grabbing onto on a silver lining. But when the score is 37-5, there's not a whole lot that you can grab onto. So I'm going to jump right in. We're going to take a look at the offense. On offense, it was there were some positive elements. Derek Anderson did have a little bit of rhythm. He was getting the ball out on time. We actually had some halfway decent carries from Chris Ivory and Marcus Murphy. Heck, Murphy averaged almost 15 yards a carry. The trouble was we could never get in a positive game script where we could use that. I actually thought the offensive line was halfway decent. We had 2 sacks for 7 yards. Sadly, on one of them, Anderson got the ball knocked out from his hands. But it really was okay. We had probably our normal Bills offense for the day. Later on, I think some of the interceptions were Anderson pressing, trying to go downfield, trying to make something happen, and that just wasn't going to happen today. So I think that with some of the earlier plays, he seemed to be on rhythm and on schedule and trying to keep us in the game. Whereas long term, we're going to need bigger plays than that. But in the context of what our normal recipe is, probably a slow, ugly, low-scoring game that our defense keeps us in, and a couple fortunate turnovers lets us win the game, this kind of offense might have actually worked in that kind of environment. Obviously, losing someone like Shady McCoy on the 3rd play of the game is just going to be really challenging. We're going to, obviously pray that LaShawn McCoy doesn't have a serious long-term problem, but a concussion is something that you can only take seriously, and that we have no idea how that's going to turn out and when we're going to be able to get him back. So it's something that I think we need to be able to plan, as though we're not going to have Shady this next week, and just cross our fingers that he's okay. Brain injuries are no joke, and that we need to make sure that we have him in the future if we're going to have any semblance of an offense. Again, the offensive line actually did their job opening some lanes. Chris Ivory had a couple nice plays, was able to move the ball, get some things going, broke some long plays. We had a 20 and a 30-yard run today, multiple nice openings there. But again, it just was never in a positive game script where we were going to see that moving in the way that we needed, or anything positive that we were going to be able to see to be able to put that into a situation where we could use it or have anything go into our advantage. So it's something that I don't think the offense was necessarily the reason we lost today, other than the turnovers. Obviously, turnovers are going to be huge, but their play on a play-to-play basis and their execution wasn't necessarily the reason we lost. I think that it's something that, we saw a couple decent plays from Zay Jones, probably Kelvin Benjamin's best game of the season. He's obviously been a huge disappointment, and having 4 receptions for 71 yards on 5 targets is his best game so far this season. Most catches, most yards. Not that 4 for 71 is anything great for a number 1 receiver, but it's Kelvin Benjamin's best game of the year, 7 games in. So being able to have some production there is reasonable. I actually thought on the late interception that was intended to Kelvin Benjamin, if he ran a little bit crisper, harder route, maybe he beats the safety to that ball. He kind of took a lazy cut out of his route and got beat to the ball by the safety, and Mitchell, ended up picking it off. I don't know. Maybe that ends up just being a knockdown pass. Maybe he gets there to contest it and it's not intercepted, but it certainly looked like something that I thought we could make a little more of. Derek Anderson was what I expected today. The man's been in the building for 9 days. He had 8 practices to be able to get through as much as he could of the playbook. He wasn't in playing shape per se. He was, getting ready in the offseason, but he never got that phone call or decided he wasn't ready to come back. We don't really know if he didn't have the option or he didn't want to come back until midseason, but obviously there are limitations to that and things that cut down the playbook that we could run. He didn't have familiarity with the receivers. So I thought in the grand scheme of things, what he offered and what he did was reasonable. I think that it was probably the best that we could see. I didn't think his interceptions were necessarily plays that, hey, he can't make those throws, so it's being picked off because it's a out route that he doesn't have the arm to do and he should know not to. I thought he was trying to make a play late in desperation while we're losing, where the defense knows they can pin their ears back to go after him, and then he knows that we're trying to press the ball down the field. So I don't necessarily think it's a complete indictment on him, other than to say, he's obviously not a great quarterback. We had this debate last week and talked about it on Twitter an awful lot. I think can be a gap between better than Nathan Peterman and still not a good NFL quarterback. So Derek Anderson, I think, is in that window. I think Derek Anderson is better than Nathan Peterman. I think there's plays he can make that Peterman can't. I think that obviously he has the understanding of a longtime NFL veteran, that he knows defenses. He's seen what they've done. He's able to make reads and be able to get us into positive plays. And then there's also huge limitations, that he's not that talented, that he doesn't have the arm talent to make every single play, and was a backup for so long for a reason and never really got too much of a chance to start beyond his run in Cleveland. And that was for a reason. So again, I think that you can be better than Nathan Peterman and not a good NFL quarterback, and that's where Derek Anderson is. Again, I think that the game that he played, if we had a great defensive effort, if our defense was the one causing turnovers and we weren't turning the ball over, I think this was an offense today that could have been enough to keep us in an ugly, low-scoring game. It's not enough that it's going to be able to bring us wins in the future. It's not enough that it's going to single-handedly carry us, but I don't think it was the sole problem for today. So again, I touched on some decent plays in the running game. We had some positive things from the receivers. I think that, Benjamin and Zay Jones played halfway decent today. I think that Derek Anderson was pressing and trying to make things happen, and that caused more of the turnovers than him just not being capable. But he's not a good quarterback, and we're not going to get a lot from him beyond that kind of mediocre effort. Again, I thought the offensive line actually played fine. We didn't get a ton of pressure. I thought Anderson had a reasonable amount of time back there. I thought the running game had some lanes, and that overall the offense was poor, but not necessarily the sole reason that we lost. I'm going to move on to the other side of the ball now. And really my frustration comes in just the unbelievable ups and downs of this defense. We start the first 6 quarters of the year giving up 75 points. We are, the laughingstock of the NFL. There was some semblance of hope after the coaching change at halftime of the Chargers game that, McDermott got much more involved in the defense, directly calling the plays then. I think now having a much stronger hand in setting up the plays and the game plan each week with Leslie Frazier, but Frazier is still calling the plays. We then go on a 3.5 game run with the best defense in the NFL. We brought the overall defense to 3rd in the NFL in DVOA. And obviously for that 3.5 games, we're the number 1 defense in that window in DVOA. We dominated teams. We caused turnovers. We had an unbelievable amount of pressure on the quarterback with a great 8-man front that rotated. We saw none of that today. We barely ever got a hand on Andrew Luck. I'll go over a couple plays that we had some close sacks coming around the end, but we had 0 sacks on him, and I think we had 1 or 2 actual hits on him. We caused 0 turnovers. That's been the benchmark of our defense, keeping our overall team in the game and setting up our offense in a reasonable chance to be able to have good field position where they automatically cash in on a field goal if they don't get any first downs, or have cashed in on a couple touchdowns on a short field. We had none of that today. There was nothing to be able to hang your hat on from a defensive standpoint, and it was a failure on all 3 levels. So first, with the defensive line, there was some penetration. Early on, we were stopping their running game and making some good plays. Early on, Star Lotulelei made a good read. Their very first drive, they're on 2nd and short after a couple plays. There was a big gap uncovered from the center to the guard. Andrew Luck goes from shotgun up to under center and is going to take what he sees as a free first down. Star Lotulelei shifts at the last minute, swims over the guard, makes a tackle on Andrew Luck for loss, no yards, and we give 3 and out. They come up the next time and get a second 3 and out, although they give up a huge punt that bounced forward. Murphy wasn't able to get up to it to make a fair catch. I don't know if that was his fault or he wasn't sure, or was in a group. I think he was probably a little gun shy after seeing what happened to Ray McLeod and didn't want to muff it, so he was going to let it bounce, but it bounced another 20-25 yards down the field, ended up being a huge bounce, giving up what should have been some pretty positive field position. From that play on, from those first 2 drives on, we didn't have another really positive drive almost the rest of the game. They had a first down on every drive the rest of the way there. So going from that point forward, I felt like drawing a line there. Hey, this is the Bills defense, 2 3 and outs. We didn't get to Luck yet, didn't cause any turnovers, but that's what we're doing. We're going to keep them, running, and going to keep ourselves in the game. And then, we're going to be in this. From that point forward, we give up a huge drive that was able to go over and give up 2 third down conversions. The 1 third down, it brought up a 4th down. We gave them a 4th down conversion. We gave them multiple, one other first down by penalty, and gave them 4 overall conversions to get their first touchdown. I don't think that's the end of the world, but those are the kind of plays that we were making the past 3.5 games, where the defense was coming up with those stops. We were getting off the field. We were causing those kind of stops to get the ball back. We were getting that ball back in decent field position and being able to set ourselves up to be in a reasonable position to win or to be competitive. And they just could not do that today. So we go through there. Then we set up another time with missed tackles. So we're then in a position where we're giving up missed tackles, we're being, letting them make plays, and they score. Then we come back. Derek Anderson has his first decent drive of the game. We get down. He throws a nice ball to Charles Clay. He's inside the 20 in the red zone, gets hit, fumbles the ball. They take that right back down. I know that can be challenging. The defense was just off the field. It felt like we had something good going, but they come back on. This is where we saw the miscommunication. I don't know if it was Milano. I don't know if it was Poyer. It looked like Poyer. I'm sure Eric will help us out in the film breakdown. But going into that, it looked like Poyer let him go right up the sideline on a wheel route. Nobody was there. In for a quick touchdown. Boom! It's 14-0. They actually went on there for the extra point to make it 13-0. But we got what we hadn't seen in a while: an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty on Jerry Hughes. Gives them half the distance to the goal. They come back out, run it with Marlon Mack, make it 14-0. Again, the defense just kept that idea going the whole rest of the play. On the 3rd touchdown, Luck is scrambling around. We can't get to him. He lets T.Y. Hilton come back. He's able to throw that to him for the touchdown. Just over and over again, we're there and not able to get things going. I thought maybe we turn that around in the second half. In the second half, we come out, go down there, put together a drive, get some points. We got a field goal. That's great. We go and we get a defensive stop. We get the ball. We do punt it back to them, get them down deep in their own territory. We get a very fortunate play where Luck isn't ready for the snap, goes over his head and goes into the end zone. Would have been great if Lorenzo Alexander could have fallen on it for the touchdown, but the safety was great. Seemed like we had a little something going. Then again, it just doesn't come in. Derek Anderson gets hit with a fumble. They immediately turn around for a second touchdown to T.Y. Hilton. And then from then on, they're just playing the 4-minute offense. I was a little embarrassed. We gave up our first 100-yard rusher of the season. It was Marlon Mack's first career 100-yard game, the first 100-yard game that the Colts had put together this year. So just an overall embarrassing effort on defense, something that had been our calling card, had been our hallmark all season, and something that we could be really proud of, that was going to keep us competitive, let us drag these games down in the mud, pull out some, wins that maybe we don't deserve per se, with finger quotes, but that we were pulling out some tough wins when we were an underdog. And I thought a lot of people felt like that was a game we could have had today. It was something that we could have done. What makes me a little bit nervous about that is I think that the Colts had an awesome game plan, especially with the aggression of our linebackers. Matt Milano and Tremaine Edmonds had been the heart and soul of this defense. They had been making plays all over the field. They had been causing disruption, causing fumbles, recovering fumbles, intercepting balls, being able to put us in a position where we really had a chance to, go through and understand where we could be able to make plays and be able to go through and really make a lot of hay. And it was, really brought to light today that aggression and that desire to be able to make plays could be used against them. It's something where they ran a ton of play action. They got both Milano and Alexander to bite on a ton of run fakes and then get beat with shallow crossers. Eric went through a film session with us, being able to show us their mesh concept and being able to show us what they do on some of their shallow crossers. And it really came to light. They were able to get the linebackers to bump up. They come up too far. The crosser comes in behind them. They can't get back in position. Luck was able to get the ball to them. And they constantly were able to do that even on run plays, on counter action. They'd get it fake going one way, let them cut back, and the linebackers got caught up in the muck of the second level blocking, and we weren't able to get anyone over there to be able to make any major plays, be able to bring anything to the table as far as big plays were concerned. And Edmonds and Milano both were exposed today in two of their poorer games on the season. At the next level, our saving grace through almost every game has been Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer. Now, I understand that when the 7 guys in front of you aren't doing a great job, it probably puts a lot of pressure on that back 4 to be able to make anything happen. But there was so many miscommunication issues and problems and failures in front of them that part of that has to be on Hyde and Poyer, making the calls, understanding who they're switching off to in motion, understanding where they need to pick that up and where they need to be able to kind of reassure those guys, especially the younger guys like Edmonds and Milano, being able to reassure them of who they should be getting, talking with the nickel guys, talking with Raphael Bush when he's on the field, being able to keep them in line and keep the integrity of that shell in place. Being able to do that and understand what we have going on really falls on them. And it's something that we have to be able to depend on and assume that they're going to be able to do no matter what. It's something that we have to be able to understand where that puts them and how they're going to be able to keep that together and be able to give us something that can be a strong overall defensive unit. So I'm sure Eric's going to help us understand more in the overall breakdown and seeing the all 22 and being able to get that and kind of pull that together into one piece and see a little bit more from it. But from the broadcast view, it really was embarrassing at all 3 levels. No pressure in the front line. The aggressiveness at the second level being used against us and being able to expose them in coverage, counter plays, play action. And then with the secondary miscommunications on coverage, the one-on-one coverage was fine. There was actually some really good coverage by obviously Tre'Davious White had a good game as always, a couple plays being able to be in there where T.Y. Hilton made a good play, made a great catch, scramble drill afterwards that no one covers for 7 seconds. But overall, beyond the one-on-one physical effort that was halfway decent. Andrew Luck only threw for 156 yards, but so much of that was a short field that he only needed that to still throw for 4 touchdowns. So we have to expect more from that from our defense as a whole. And today was just obviously a very poor performance that we need to hope was in a vacuum and wasn't going to be in place to be able to share that and have the overall view go. So it's something that I think that we can move on to our overall thoughts on the whole and be able to talk about what does this mean? Where does this take us? And we'll go a little bit into some of the questions in the chat. So being able to understand where we take this from now. I think, we've had a lot of questions in here. New Banimator was asking, what's more important, winning games without our rookie quarterback or working towards a draft pick? I'm never one to want to ever tank on purpose. I'm not one. I'm never going to go into a game hoping we lose. I'm never going to go into a game thinking we should try to lose. I understand and can take away that, hey, after a loss, I guess at least it helps the draft pick. It's something, a silver lining that can be taken from things, but I'm never going to go into a game hoping that we lose or trying to lose. And I'm confident that's not in the DNA of Brandon Beane or Sean McDermott. McDermott's very clear about that. People like Kyle Williams and Lorenzo Alexander didn't come back to play on this team to give up and to try to lose. That's just not something they're going to do. Now, I do think that there can be decisions made that outsiders will see as consciously trying to tank, consciously trying to lose, when as soon as Josh Allen's ready, we have to put him back down there. CR's in the chat asking about that. As soon as Josh Allen's healthy, he has to go back in. It's critical for him to get these reps, get those learning curves, get those bumps and bruises out of the way so that we're able to go in and understand where we need to go. I think there is a question that some people will ask about who. I don't think that Allen's going to be ready next week. Heck, I think it's possible we have 4 or 5 games here and he doesn't come back until after the bye in week 12. So I think that we're going to see more of Derek Anderson. I hope it's not Nathan Peterman. Obviously, the game today was very rough. Derek Anderson did not do a ton to reassure us of what his long-term capabilities are. But again, I think his turnovers were more out of an effort to make bigger plays, press the ball, and take it downfield versus something that was, probably in place to, be able to, because of lack of ability to do something. But again, it's debatable. The results are the results, and it's something that, Nathan Peterman wasn't a lot better than this or wasn't a lot worse than this. So I get that there's going to be debate of that. I think that another week of game planning, another week of practices, another week of reps with the wide receivers is going to let us be able to, get a little bit more going and see at least some semblance of positive from Derek Anderson. I think that if the defense shows up, we're going to be able to see a little bit more competitive environment, a little bit more that makes sense for what he could keep us in on schedule and within the parameters of his abilities to be able to do that. I think that's possible. But I think we have to be realistic in how that's going to work. I think that we need to be, just understood in what the limitations are with him, and that accepting Derek Anderson as our best option still is the lesser of evils and not a great quarterback overall. Mid pod drink when you're going solo. Some of the other questions that we have in there, I think that being able to look at the next steps, I understand all the calls out there for, we need to fire the coach. This is an embarrassing offense. What in the world's going on? I talked about this last week. I think that being able to have someone like Brian Daboll as your offensive coordinator, but not letting Daboll bring in any of his own coaches is a challenge. I think that it's something that, doesn't necessarily mean that we're not able to make any progress, but I think it's something he should have the option to do in the offseason to be able to bring in some of his coaches. I also think there's a lot more on the lack of weapons and the lack of receivers who can create separation than there is necessarily just on him, along with the talent at the quarterback position and what we're hoping to see from Allen developing in the future and the obvious limitations with Nathan Peterman or Derek Anderson. So I still have hope with Brian Daboll in the future that with Allen's development, with bringing in more linemen, with bringing in more receivers, with drafting talent into those two spots, I'd love to see both offensive linemen and receivers taken in two of the first three picks of the draft. I think that that's something that can inject some talent and be able to bring someone like a Brian Daboll back into a position where he can succeed. I don't know that it automatically means he will, but I think that it's feasible that he could if we're able to understand that and able to see it. So being able to go through and kind of put us in a position to view that and try to take something from that is at least something where we can look to that from a coaching standpoint and from a development standpoint. The calls to fire everybody and to fire McDermott, to fire Bean, to bring in a whole new crew because obviously this isn't working is just crazy. I got into it with a handful of people on Twitter that I just don't understand the view of they are in the middle of a process. They pitched to the Pagulas. They explained that, hey, there's a lot of contracts on this team that we don't agree with, a lot of money that was paid to people that we don't think is going to be part of our long-term view. You saw them trade off some of those people. You saw them release a lot of those people. We are eating an NFL high, an almost a record NFL high in dead cap space at $57 million. That is an enormous amount. $57 million. Think about how many different people, if you just gave out $5 million contracts, not huge players, but $5 million contracts, that's 11 contributing players. That's 2 linemen and 3 more receivers and an extra defensive end and another linebacker and another safety and another corner and an extra tight end. Being able to put all that together is enormous. So taking our medicine and going through that and having to get rid of those contracts, all that comes off the books. We go into next season with a decent outlook where we're going to be able to at least bring in some talent and be able to do that. I understand that the results are very frustrating. I understand that not seeing immediate turnaround or heck improvement from a team that went to the playoffs last year is really challenging. But as you're going through there and trying to bring in people that you feel are going to fit your vision, your team, and what you're trying to build going forward that you want to invest in long-term contracts is going to be a problem. Now, I think the question that comes into play is I think that we've actually shown a front office that has a great aptitude for finding talent on the defensive side of the ball. I think that having players like obviously Tre'Davious White in the first round is great. Tremaine Edmonds in the first round is great. They look like they're going to pay off as first round talents, but I'm impressed with where they're able to bring in people like Taron Johnson in the 4th round, Matt Milano in the 5th round, able to bring in people off the street that are contributing, that are able to be on the roster and beneficial players, picking up a Jordan Phillips that contributes in the rotation. I know people get frustrated with the money that was paid to Star Latuile and to Trent Murphy, but they've both been contributing short of today where everyone was terrible. That defensive line rotation has been a huge reason of why we've seen the production that we have. So now being in that second year, what they explained would be the bottom of that curve where they're going through and able to gut that roster to get us to the point where next year we have 10 draft picks. We have $90 million in cap space, give or take, depending on who may not be brought back. Could be more, could be less. It's something that we're in a position where we don't have the players on the roster now that are part of the long-term plan. the fact that they made that pitch to the Pagulas is why I'm confident, even for the people ranting and raving that we should fire everyone, that's absolutely not going to happen. There is no possibility, short of some off the field scandal or some crazy thing that comes to light, on field performance is not going to be the reason that anyone is terminated from a high level leadership standpoint. I think we'll see some position coaches that don't come back next year. Again, I think that they'll let Dable bring in some of his own guys. I think that we might see some new people from a quarterback coach standpoint is probably the one I could see being the most impactful. But we'll see some moving things around there. But I think that the core of Brian Dable, Leslie Frazier, Sean McDermott, and Brandon Beane, that core is coming back next year. So I think that they're going to have the chance to spend that money in the offseason. I think they're going to have the chance to invest those draft picks. I think that they're going to be able to go in and put together a plan that's going to let them see through their vision and get to that point. I understand that there's people that, based on the results now, don't want to see them do that, don't want to let them do that. But it's something that I feel is going to happen and that they're going to have a chance to do that. Now, where I was talking about their ability to find that talent on the defensive side of the ball, where I think they've hit way more than they missed, I do think there's some question about, have we shown the ability to do that on offense? Now, I don't think that there have been a lot of misses because there haven't been a ton of investments. Their highest money investments on offense have been signing Chris Ivory, signing Patrick DeMarco, some just above veteran minimum deals for Vlad Dukas, bringing back Jordan Mills, things like that. There haven't been a ton of things. There were some veteran level deals, veteran minimum deals that haven't been anything huge, plus or minus. But overall, they haven't missed a lot, but they certainly haven't hit a lot. They certainly haven't been able to hit on anything terribly exciting yet. And I think that it's understandable to question, do they have the eye for that offensive side of the ball? Now, I've seen a little bit of hope from Zay Jones. I think he's one of the pieces I could see being on the team long term. I don't think he's a number one or number two receiver in a good NFL offense. I think he can be your big slot and someone who can be a number three option to move the chains and keep the ball moving. I think he's shown the ability to be on the team long term. I think Deion Dawkins has been very positive, was a good draft pick, and someone who looks to be a very serviceable tackle. I think if we have a really high draft pick next year and we have a chance to get a high-end premium franchise left tackle, I'd love to see Dawkins move back to the right tackle spot and put that guy at left tackle, or let the rookie start at right tackle for the first year and then possibly switch down the line. But I think that we can improve our overall tackles with a premium investment early on. I think that there's a couple free agents that are out there that we can go through. I'm not an expert scout from an offensive line standpoint, so I don't know where I think that's going to take us. I know that one person with a logical connection is Darrell Williams, the right tackle for Carolina. Obviously, Brandon Beane was the guy who helped draft him. They brought him along. He's played really well. He's right there ranked as maybe the first or second offensive tackle, right tackle, that's going to be available on the market. It's possible he re-signs with Carolina before that, but if he does make it to the open market, there's logical connections there where I could see him brought in as a definite upgrade to Jordan Mills and a nice piece to add there. I think that we will see an investment in the high rounds on the offensive line, maybe two, and an investment or two from a offensive line free agency standpoint. So I think it's very possible that we have three new starting offensive linemen next year. I have an unpopular opinion. I also think it's possible Vlad Dukas comes back. He's been a serviceable left guard. I think that he's reasonably cheap. I don't think you can afford to pay all of your offensive linemen across the board premium money. Dallas is running into that now where they couldn't afford to do that and still have people at other positions. I think you can have two or three premium level offensive linemen. We have the benefit of Deion Dawkins on a rookie contract. We have our cornerback of the future and Tre'Davious White on a rookie contract. We have Josh Allen on a rookie contract, obviously hoping he turns out to be a franchise quarterback. But either way, way, your three highest paid positions of left tackle, corner, and quarterback, we all have on rookie contracts. So we have a window where they can make some investment in a couple other spots here. So I do expect them to see some serious investment at 2 or 3 offensive line spots. Looking to our weapons, I think we could add virtually anywhere. A lot of people are assuming that both LaShawn McCoy and Charles Clay are going to be gone next year. They are both under contract. They are both under contract for a healthy number north of $9 million and change. They are in a position where I feel like LaShawn McCoy is likely to be back. I don't think we ask him to take a pay cut because I don't think he would, and I don't think he's in a position where he has to because he'll get paid again on the open market for sure on a 1-year deal and has some guaranteed money from us. I think almost 3 million, 2.8, 2.7. I think that they'll bring him back just because he's still a legitimate offensive weapon. I do think we see a mid-round running back selection to bring the running back of the future back. Chris Ivory's still under contract next year for just a little over $2 million. Again, he's not our biggest problem. He's still a productive player. I think he's fine to be part of the backfield. I think Chris Ivory is going to be back. Charles Clay at tight end, I think, is a legitimate question. We've seen some development from Jason Kroom, probably not enough to be a number 1 tight end, but enough to be a legitimate part of a rotation and a number 2 guy. Logan Thomas has been disappointing. I think there's a lot of people who question whether we should have brought back Nick O'Leary or kept Logan Thomas, and it's probably fair to debate. We probably could have kept Nick O'Leary. I don't know that it would have made a huge difference, but Logan Thomas's development has been disappointing. Charles Clay is still a NFL tight end. I don't think he's great. I don't think he's ever been worth his contract, but so much of that was guaranteed and front-loaded that it didn't really matter. Next year is the first year that there's any cap savings by cutting him. However, it's still $4.5 million of his $9 million guaranteed. So we are paying Charles Clay $4.5 million next year, no matter what. That is going to happen. If we release him, that's all we pay and we move on. We're then also going to have to go out and sign a starting tight end to be able to come in anyways. So the question is, do you want to go out? As an example, Cincinnati has 2 tight ends, both Tyler Kroft and CJ Uzoma, who are both going to be free agents. There's a handful of other guys around the NFL that I think make some sense, could be worth taking a stab at. None of them are obvious number 1 tight end guys. I think that's something where if you saw a really high-end weapon available, that's maybe an early second round kind of pick that maybe we make that could be that number 1 tight end. I'm going to assume, even though it's unpopular, that they bring Charles Clay back. We have a ton of cap space. Say we have $87 million in cap space. Is there really a difference between $91.5 million and $87 million? I don't think that there's any contract that we're not going to be able to sign because we brought back Charles Clay. So I'm going to assume that we bring him back, although I won't be shocked if we let him go simply to have the $4.5 million in cap relief and ready to move on to a new position. I do think that we see investment. There will obviously be at least a signing in the tight end room, probably a draft pick that comes in to compete there. I think we see Jason Kroom back next year. I think it's 50-50 if we see Charles Clay, but it's very likely we see some of those guys. Probably likely we let Logan Thomas move on. He hasn't shown a ton of ability. Maybe he's there as your 3rd tight end. Maybe he's not, but not going to be a game-changing player either way. Receiver is where I see the most of the turnover coming in. I do think we have Andre Holmes still under contract next year, although I think that could be to the point where he could be a cap casualty. I think they'd love to be in a position where they can release him and don't need him just for a special teams play, but he is a good special teams player. He is a good blocker downfield. He's not terrible as your 4th wide receiver, but I'd prefer to see an upgrade. Zay Jones, again, I think that there's a possibility that he can develop into a legitimate number 3 receiver. Right now, he's having to pretend to be a number 2 receiver. I think that we need an upgrade there, but I'm okay with him being on the roster. He's still in a rookie contract. He's still in a position where he is cheap and able to be on the team as only a 2nd-round contract. That's the kind of guy that you want to let run out the contract. He's going to be here for a couple more years. Ray McLeod is a late round pick. He was a late 6th round pick. Nothing that we're married to. Maybe he develops into something. Last week, obviously, was terrible from a return standpoint. That's where his value is supposed to be. The gimmicky wide receiver screens, your jet sweep motions, end arounds, and the kick return game. That's where his value is. We can obviously upgrade there. I think there's a lot of people that look to maybe a DeAnthony Thomas or an Aldrick Robinson could come in and take that role immediately, and Ray could be released. I'm not even going to talk about the idea that Kelvin Benjamin is back next year because I think it's literally a 0% chance that Brandon Beane or Sean McDermott invest any money in him being on the team next year. I'll honestly be surprised if he survives the trade deadline. Again, he had a halfway decent game today. He had 4 catches for 71 yards. That's not our biggest problem. He also left the locker room refusing to be interviewed after the game. There's obviously some cultural challenges and some issues being able to, kind of fit into what he obviously sees his value as an NFL number 1 wide receiver, looking to establish his contractual value on the market and what the Bills are actually using him for and what he's being able to do. So I don't think that there's any possibility he's back next year, but I think that there is a possibility that he makes it through the rest of the season. I think it's 50% or better that they do trade him. The challenge is going to be what you can get back for him. I think that the drawing line is between a 4th and a 5th round pick. If they get a 4th or a 5th, they're probably going to do it. If they only get a 6th or 7th rounder, unless there's major locker room issues, maybe they don't take away what's, one of the only NFL caliber receivers there. Again, similar to what I said, where Derek Anderson can be really, really bad, but better than Nathan Peterman. Kelvin Benjamin can be a pain, a malcontent in the locker room, not running great routes, not showing great effort, and be our number 1 wide receiver and our only really NFL caliber wide receiver. So some of the people that would say addition by subtraction and there'll be camaraderie by getting rid of a bad voice in the locker room, I think that's very valid. I don't think we have anyone who's going to step up to fill in for a number 1 wide receiver. Zay Jones will be forced to, but he's not a number 1 wide receiver. So it's certainly not going to help the product on the field or Josh Allen's development through the rest of the year, but I'm actually okay with that. I think he may be such a cancer that he needs to be removed and is going to be someone that we see traded somewhere by the deadline. But no matter what, he's not going to be on this roster next year. We ran through a lot of things. There's, some things on the market with your Amari Coopers, your Demaryius Thomas that could be acquired for a high, probably premium draft pick. I'm fine if they do that. I'm okay if we keep the assets and just wait and try to sign someone in the offseason. There are some solid wide receivers in the offseason that we went through. You're going to see Randall Cobb. You're going to see Golden Tate. You're going to see some guys there. I actually think there's some decent value at the next level where you could see like a Geronimo Allison from Green Bay that's out there. I think you could see some guys at that caliber that, could be brought in. John Brown could be brought back. We tried to go after him from Baltimore last year. He could be brought in to be the deep threat for Josh Allen. I think that we see multiple investments there with probably 2 reasonably priced. Maybe we do one $10 million receiver, maybe a $12 million plus if we get a good guy. I think we see another $5 to $6 to $8 million receiver brought in. And then I also think we see a high-end talent brought in the first 3 rounds of the draft, just depending on where the board sets up. Obviously, they're always going to draft best player available, but I think that we're going to see someone in those top rounds brought in. I also think that we'll get into this in the offseason shows more, but I think the Bills will be a very active team in trading down and picking up more assets and that kind of thing. So again, when you have games like today where the Bills took a shellacking and just got whooped up and down the field, we needed to find something else to talk through tonight. I wanted to go through a little bit of my thoughts why I think that the receivers that are there, the talent that's there is equal to the challenges on the coaching staff. The coaching staff obviously have not done a fantastic job. They have not been able to scheme around the lack of talent, but I also think the talent has let down what has been some reasonably called games, some potential talent that's there, and some ideas that, aren't always going to be easy to be able to see through. So it's something where I think that there's still potential. There's reason to have hope. That's hard to say after a game like today, but I really think there is. That's the main philosophical difference I saw on social media today. I think all of us agree today was an embarrassing game. There was very little positive to be taken from today. The difference is some of us are going to take that and go down a path that means there's nothing positive to be able to go through and nothing that we're going to be able to take from this. You need to fire everybody. There's also a path that you can say, hey, I understand today was really bad. However, the defense has been better. We are seeing some real solid, consistent glimmers of hope from the young talent on the team that I think we have legitimate pieces at some major spots that can be the future of this team and the future of this organization. Being able to put us in a position where we're able to build around that and supplement that is what's going to allow us to have something to hold on to through the rest of this season and what we can look forward to in the offseason and a successful 2019 and 2020 season that I think we are building towards. So I'd love to say that this is the worst it's going to get, but there's probably going to be a couple more ugly losses this year and more losses than wins. I'm confident to say this is going to be one of the downsides, but it's not going to be all downside. We are going to have more wins this year. We are going to have upsets in games that the national media doesn't think we deserve. There are going to be times that are going to be fun. We're going to see some great games. We're going to see some exciting events. We're going to see some huge defensive performances again. Hopefully, we'll see some promise from Josh Allen down the line. I think that we're going to be able to understand where we can go and where we can see the idea of what we can accomplish. But overall, all we can ask for is something to be able to trust and look into. So as we wrap up here, I'm going to look and see if we have any more questions in the pod or in the chat. Ark is asking when Josh is supposed to come back. All we've seen is that it's weeks. We did get the idea that it was not a serious ulnar collateral ligament injury, which in baseball translates to Tommy John surgery. They said that is not something that's considered at this time. They thought that it was a couple weeks that he needed to rest. A minor injury would have been 1 to 2 weeks. A mid-grade could have been 4 to 6 weeks. So I have a feeling they're not going to rush him back at all. They don't want to risk further inflammation or obviously a further tear where you do look at Tommy John surgery and you jeopardize his entire offseason and even a piece of next year's season. So they are going to be ultra conservative for that. My guess is we now are just finished week 7. We have games in week 8, 9, and 10, 3 more games, and then the bye week in week 11. My guess is that we're going to see 4 more weeks without Josh Allen, the bye week, and bring him back there for week 12. So that's just my guess. That's just making assumptions based on the conservative nature of his value to the team. The idea that they probably wanted to let him just kind of rest and sit from the background and understand what he's supposed to do and learn that they kind of wanted to have happen if some other quarterback had played better from the beginning. So I think they're probably going to take advantage of that window, give him 5 or 6 weeks to just sit and watch, then bring him back in week 12. He'll then finish out, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, week 17, 6 more games. So we'd get 6 more games of live snaps, development, and the ability to watch him. As for who starts in those 4 games in the interim, I have to assume it's Derek Anderson. The view that the value those veterans have in the locker room that are still playing to win each and every week, I think that relies on Derek Anderson and having that confidence that's going to be there. And the thought of going back to Nathan Peterman, I think, is just a fatal flaw that McDermott cannot allow. That they can't be able to go in and do that. So I'm hopeful that they give Derek Anderson more reps with the receivers, more time with the coaching staff to put in more of the offense, and that we will see not good, but tolerable quarterback play, that if we get that recipe I always talk about, positive turnover differential, positive penalty differential, a couple big plays go our way, then I think we can be in a position where Derek Anderson can be the game manager and steward to not lose the game that I don't think Nathan Peterman can be. Derek Anderson is not going to lead us to victories. It's going to be the running game, some timely plays by him, a couple things that are there. I think it could be a rough window in between until we get to that point, but I think that's what's in the cards for us and what we're going to be looking for. As I close things out, I think we had a lot of time to be able to talk today on, what we had to look forward to in the future, trying to find some, silver linings to pull a glimpse of optimism from. Today was a horrible game, a rough and frustrating and embarrassing loss. Nothing that any Bills fan should be satisfied with, should be happy with, but something that doesn't need to mean that everything is terrible and that we're losing everything here. There's reason to have optimism for the future. There's reason to have hope for the future. And we're going to be here with you, good or bad. We're going to be able to, talk things through, be your sounding board, be your cathartic therapy to be able to talk through what we think should have happened. And we'll do that again next week and the week after and the week after that. So again, this is Greg Thompsett. You can find me on Twitter at Greg Thompsett, GregTompsett. I'll definitely be excited to follow back any Bills fans here, be able to talk a little bit more and help you through this as well. We want to send another shout out to Aaron Quinn and his beautiful family, beautiful healthy new baby, happy and healthy mama at home. There, I saw some pictures. Aaron brought them home today. He's getting some rest. I'm sure he's had some sleepless nights being there, bringing in his second baby. So congratulations there, a new member of the Cover One family and member of Bills Mafia. Just proud to be able to be here with you guys and looking forward to another great week as we go. All right, signing off for today. Thanks for being here with us, and we'll talk to you next week.